Another interesting way to select in Photoshop is to select by a focused area. So here we have a picture of a lens, and you can see the background is really blurry and this foreground is in focus. And Photoshop actually knows that, and you can make a selection by this. Now, this image might not be very useful, but maybe you had a picture of someone standing and in the background it was out of focus, and you wanted to adjust either one of those pieces of that image. You could select by who is in focus. So if the person's in focus, you could actually select them a lot easier. So let's take a look at how this works. If we go to select and we go to focus area, it's going to take a moment. You can see that it's thinking here, and it's going to calculate what is in focus and what is out of focus. And here you can see the things that are mostly in focus, these pieces of this lens. Now we can change the viewing mode as if we were changing it in the color range options. So we can do marching ants and it'll show us what's being selected. We can do an overlay, like a mask overlay type thing. We can do on black, on white, black and white. Again, this is all dependent on however you're working. Some of these are more useful than others depending on the image and what you're doing. Reveal layer. So we could do something like the black and white, or maybe even marching ants, and so we can see this picture here. And when we look at this picture, you can see, it grabbed the things that were most in focus, the things that were most sharp. And we can make some adjustments here. So we have our focus range, and we can turn off auto. Right now it's trying to auto calculate that. If we turn this number all the way down and give it a moment to think, you'll see it's going to pick out less of a range. So things that are the most extremely in focus. And of course, if we crank that number all the way up, it's going to pick everything. So as we turn this number down, we can start seeing it grabbing a little more things that are in focus here. So let's bump it down to maybe 5, and you can see that it's picking up this is pretty sharp. These numbers are sharp here, so it knows to grab these. So this is a great way for you to go ahead and grab things that are in and out of focus. You can also add or subtract to your selection. So if we said, well, I want it to grab really all of this 3 here, you can click on that and it'll go ahead and find that information, kind of like a magic wand tool, and pull that in also for you. You can also subtract, so you can do the same thing. We can get rid of that 3 if we wanted to, and we can use the same shortcuts that we would normally use, Shift to add and Alt or Option to subtract. There's some more advanced things that you can adjust here, such as the image noise level. So this is how much noise it's allowing into the image. So let it recalculate there. And it will actually find out things that have more or less noise based on how blurry it is. So it's a little more noisy, so you can see that the selection here has changed a little more versus if we had a very low number. Okay, and then finally, how do we want to output it? Once we have our selection made, let's go ahead and turn these back to auto. Once we have our selection made, how do we want to save this out? Do we want to just make it a selection so that we can edit that selection? Or do we want to make it a layer mask? We can turn it into a new layer with a layer mask, a completely new document, or even a new document with a layer mask. So all these options are going to give you the different ways that it will output this information. So for instance, we can select new layer, and we also have an option to soften edges and select and mask here. But if we set it to new layer and we hit OK, it'll take that selection and put it in a new layer for us. Now it hasn't deleted the original image, it's just overlaid the new layer on top. And so we can make the edits. So let's just say we wanted to make some kind of adjustments. We'll just do brightness and contrast so it's easy to see. So say we went ahead and made our adjustments there and hit OK. The layer behind it still has its information. That hasn't been erased. So if you hide that layer, you can still see the original layer, but then we can bring it back, and then you can do, some cool things. Maybe you want to make that look like it's rusted or it has some kind of thing going on. We can do like a multiply and it'll darken up that area, or maybe we want to make it look a little shinier, the parts that are in focus. So that's just another way to select inside of Photoshop by selecting on a focused area.